Alright, so making a character on Baldur's Gate 3. I want to make a little disclaimer right here before we continue. A lot of this terminology, a lot of this stuff, a lot of these things that we're going to be discussing about in this video, they are going to feel like just basic stuff for veteran players. Just to have in mind that this game is going to be launching on PlayStation and Xbox as well, so this video is focused for those new players that not know a whole bunch of this stuff, and let me tell you, this is just not it is not beginner friendly, so it is very much needed that you do understand some of these mechanics. It's also taking mechanics from Divinity Original Sin 2, so we're going to be discussing about all of that terminology and different stuff that I am going to be using on this video. I highly advise for you to watch my previous beginner guides videos, because otherwise if we actually discuss about every single nitpicky little thing that we have in here, it's just going to take way too long, and I respect your time. I do not want to waste your time, so we're going to be focusing on the basics and every single little thing that you need to know about creating a character, and what are those little things that they seem to be, they seem to be weird. So first and foremost, I want to make a clarification. This is just as truest as possible to a classic role-playing game. As a matter of fact, Dungeons & Dragons is what started it all. It might have been some shady tabletops prior to that, but it was just Dungeons & Dragons that revolutionized every single little thing about RPGs. And if we get RPGs for our game consoles, for our PCs, in later years, it was all thanks to this. That being said, it's still very much different, and this is all based on a tabletop game trying to be emulated on a computer game, on a console game. So a lot of these mechanics are going to be very weird, but I want to clarify very early now in the video that if you're a D&D player of the 5th edition, then all of this is just going to be very familiar to you, because it's just the very same thing. It's just the very same thing that you have in Dungeons & Dragons and the 5th editions of Dungeons & Dragons. So that being said, I want to be very clear about how building your character is going to affect the game world and the overall gameplay that you are going to have in this game, because opposite to different RPGs that we have nowadays that you're building the build of your character is just going to affect the gameplay and overall just you killing people. It is not the same thing here. While the gameplay is amazing in Baldur's Gate, because it's the very much something of a improved or an enhanced version of Divinity Original Sin. I wouldn't say improved or enhanced, it's just the take on D&D for the original version that we had in that we had in Divinity Original Sin. The thing is that your build in here is going to affect the entirety of the world, not just the gameplay and the combat, because this is a game that is natively going to be a narrative-driven game. As a matter of fact, there's just too many people that when they see a very long fight, something that is they think that this is going to take them for quite a long time to defeat that fight, they might as well just completely skip it, because by using your build you can drive out situations that you do not need to actually fight. You need not to fight in every single situation. There are many solutions about how can you tackle different situations that you are going to have in the world, and that is what this is going to be focused as well, because I want to clarify that as much as possible, that all of these little things that you have in here, they are going to affect your reaction to the world, whether you fight, whether you talk about your way out of situations, and overall your character build is going to be a role-playing experience of you using your cunning or your brute force, or depending on your playstyle. Just to have in mind that this game has so many contextual actions, so many different places that you can avoid by going different ways, so many dialogue options that are going to allow you to avoid fights. There are some fights that going to be done regardless of everything, but trust me, there's just going to be so many solutions to many different things that you are going to be able to do so. And that is why it's so important to build your character having all of this in mind. It is not only going to be in combat. Every single little thing that you do in right here, your background, your abilities, which are stats, all of that is going to have an impact on how you approach the world on itself. So, right out of the bat, we also have the origin characters, and this is a bias of myself. I always advise for you to make your own character, because the origin characters, they are always going to be in the game. You're always going to be able to have them in your party. So, having a custom character, there's going to be more origin characters. Having a custom character allows you to have a little bit of more versatility on the character class. For example, Shadowheart Shadowheart is a cleric. You cannot change the cleric out of Shadowheart. Asterion, he's a rogue. You cannot change the rogue. There's something that was true on Divinity Original Sin 2, and it has been true on every single D&D game that you have out there. Purchasing the services of hirelings or sellswords. They are not going to have background stories, but they are going to affect how your party behaves. They are going to, like for example, something real weird that I think that I'm going to do in one of my playthroughs is just going to have so many rogues. Because they are broken when it comes to ranged rogues, if you have been watching my previous videos, so that is going to make a joke out of tactician. We're going to be speaking about party composition in a different video, but I want you to know is that it is just a best idea to have a custom character instead of customizing the looks of Gale, Asterion, Lae'zel, Will, and Shadowheart, which is something that you can do. You can customize their looks, and you can experience the origin story firsthand by them being the main character. But it's just something that I like about making a new character. It's going to give you more party diversity and versatility because you're going to have an extra class to choose from. So that being said, the origin. Selecting background of your character depending on the class as well, it's something very important because it's going to give you a proficiency. So all of these proficiencies that you are going to have right here, they are going to affect how you are going to approach your situations, not only when you speak to someone, but also when you're doing contextual actions. So for example, if I were to make a rogue, it's also going to give me the proficiencies that he has right here. So a rogue is going to be proficient in acrobatics, lead of hands, stealth, insight, perception, deception, persuasion, and they are going to have some kind of expertise. But if I already have all of this right here, I can only increase my my proficiencies by changing my background right here. So I'm going to have expertise on lead of hand and stealth. So probably this is something that I would like to have in my background for my character. I could probably be a criminal because it's going to give me proficiency on deception and stealth as well. But also I could probably be a charlatan, which is going to give me deception proficiency, but it's going to give me sleight of hand proficiency, which is going to be stacking with my sleight of hand expertise, which is going to help to my rolls. I advise for you to watch my dice rolls video. It's going to help in my rolls, and it's just going to make my character that much more proficient and being able to tackle these situations with easiness, with a little bit more of an easiness than the rest of the characters. And do have in mind that, like I said, this is a narrative-driven game. If I want to lie myself out of every situation that I have, this something possible that I can do. Is my character going to feel that way? Some things that I wouldn't advise, mainly because of immersive breakness. It's going to break your immersion. So for example, we have the paladin, but it's also going to make some little different things. Paladins, they are entitled to upholding an oath, and if you break that oath, you're going to have a new class of paladin, which is going to be the oath breaker, but probably you'd not want to break your oath. If you make a paladin that is going to be a charlatan, telling lies, it's against your oath. You're not supposed to be telling lies, so you're going to be wasting your oath. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to role-playing the game the way that you want to play. Maybe you want to be a renegade paladin that he feels that everything about his life has been a lie and he's just trying to take a different path. That deception proficiency is also going to be affected by the charisma. Charisma is going to influence at some point how effective you are on persuasion and deception, and it's just overall going to be a native inherent thing that is going to work. So do not be afraid of selecting a background. Just be aware that that background has to synergize with every single thing that your character is going to roleplay as, and what kind of situations do you want for that background to help you to alleviate. So for example as well, what I always like to do on my paladin is going to have soldier, because whenever I am talking about away from a situation, I want to feel for my paladin to have the choice of being able to be this white knight that is going to persuade his situation out of the way, or he can just threaten you and make you be afraid of it. And because of the high charisma that we have with the paladin, we're most likely always going to bypass those threatened situations. Now, the race is one of the most important aspects of building a character. I am going to be using the paladin as an example right here to showcase you a little bit about how the race features are going to give you cantrips. Cantrips are just basic spells that you can always use regardless of rest and unrest. But for example, you're going to have the race features, and the race features, they are going to give you the descriptions right here. And I think that this is the most important thing about well, not the most important thing, but one of the highest important things that you need to have in mind. So for example, the tiefling, let's say the serial tiefling. A serial tiefling is just a perfect for a paladin because it's going to give you +1 to strength and +1 to charisma, which are actually stats that the paladin has to have in mind as a main thing. A skeleton of a paladin should always have high strength and high charisma. Whereas, for example, let's say that you want to make a rogue, then you probably want to go to drow because you're going to have base dexterity, and it's also going to have proficiency with rapiers, which is something that you should most definitely like to use with rogues. But for example, this one has a hand crossbow proficiency. Maybe you do not want to use crossbows with your rogue, and you want to be probably a wood elf, which is going to have proficiency with longbows. And do have in mind that races, as well as they level up, they are going to have native spells sometimes. So for example, the tiefling is going to get the cantrips, and those cantrips, sometimes they will be things similar to smite of the paladin, so it's natively going to be a good thing for a tiefling. Just have in mind that while you can min-max and just play this at your leisure, do not actually broaden your horizons that much. This game actually does requires quite a lot of min-maxing because the maximum level in this game is going to be 12, so your choices that you take in here are actually going to be quite important. Now that we have spoken about the classes and how they are going to be affecting, let's move on to skills. And these skills are going to give you a little bit more proficiency with what you want to do in the world. Remember that we are going to roleplay this game as much as we want, and depending on how you want to tackle on the game, maybe you want to be a religious paladin, but also to have in mind that persuasion has a charisma modifier that it's going, well, not charisma modifier in itself, but persuasion checks are more often than not, they are going to have a charisma modifier that is going to be affecting how persuasive you are, and the charisma, it says it's just right there. So for example, I shouldn't be a religious paladin because it's going to be an intelligence skill. So for example, I want to be mostly close to the skills that I know that I am going to be using with my character, but at least the ones that I can take right now, I can take one free one that I do not care about being proficient for, which is probably going to be medicine and religion, because I already have athletics, which is going to be a strength skill. My paladin is going to be a strength character. We have intimidation, which is a charisma skill. My paladin is a charismatic character. We have persuasion, which is a charisma skill. I am going to be a charismatic character. Just to have in mind that your skills and proficiency should be aligned to what your stats, or aka abilities, are going to be. And finally, just to wrap up the video, let's talk about the abilities and how you should play this right here. Like I said, this is not a very beginner friendly game. As a matter of fact, if you are new to D&D, my advice is for you to look for a guide right here, or all in all just use recommended, because this is just this is just not beginner friendly, but I'll try to make it for you. Again, I am going to be using the paladin as a pipeline, but it should also help you to know how this is going to work. So this is the recommended paladin, but as a matter of fact, I, as I know how am I going to be playing my character. I already know how he's going to level up and how I have my build planned. I know that I am going to need charisma. My paladin is going to be a charismatic character. It's also going to be somewhat of a warrior, and it's going to need some tankiness. Dexterity. I am not going to be using dexterity because my paladin is going to have high armor class because of high heavy armor. So I'm going to leave this one as a plus, not to receive any penalties. But I do want to receive penalties on intelligence, because intelligence, I'm not going to use this thing for anything. Never. I am never going to be using intelligence with my paladin, because I'm never going to be using ability checks that require intelligence. I'm never going to be casting spells with my paladin. I'm never going to be using this stat, so I do not want to use this thing. I am going to avoid this thing like if it were the plague. Also, I am never going to be using wisdom with my paladin. Never. I am never going to be using checks that require wisdom. I am never going to be using spells that require wisdom. So I do not care about this receiving a penalty. Now my final points, I could decide either to place them into charisma and constitution like this, or maybe I can lower this thing a little bit down right here. But as you can see, I'm leaving on just a single little thing that I know that I am going to be using. I do not want to have penalties in here because I do not want penalties in my armor class, my armor checks. I do not want to have penalties on my initiative rolls either, but I do not want to have this one really that high. And since I'm just able to get strength so high, I'm not able to get my strength all the way to 17. I'm just going to be deciding whether should I be placing my points into charisma or constitution. Overall, I would like to max out my charisma because it's a main stat that I'm going to be using with my paladin. But overall, I think that it also matters what kind of bonuses are you going to get. As you can see right here, if I lower my charisma, my constitution, it is not going to give me that plus next skill. So probably I just want to have 14 and 15. At 16, I'm going to get the plus 3. So I probably do want to have that. And then this is just a overall balanced paladin. It's ideally how it works. I know that's a whole lot of information to dig in, and it's just an example of how a paladin would work. But if I were to give you the very same example, just real fast, a rogue is going to be somewhat of charismatic because of the deception check, so I do not want to have negatives on that. My rogue is not going to be wisdom, a wisdom rogue. My rogue is never going to be hit. It's always going to be hidden in the battlefield, and my rogue is never going to be strength because it's not a strong character. All my points are going to go into dexterity, and I do not want my intelligence to be negative because I do want to use some proficiency skills that use intelligence. So overall, I think that with the rogue you should be focusing all of your points into dexterity. Maybe if you want to multi-class or you want to use the trickster, arcane trickster, maybe you could be using intelligence. But overall, I would like for I'd say that charisma, it's a very important skill for every single person that wants to roleplay as someone, because charisma is going to add to my deception proficiency skill, and I do want to be a deceptive rogue. So just have in mind that the skills that you know that you're never going to be using, you can most definitely have them in negative, and there's no problem about that. Oh boy, that was a long video, was a whole lot of information. I hope that it was useful to you. Remember that I was told you today you go just a beautiful person, you are today go just a beautiful person. Now I'll be seeing you got them, go just a beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day, and goodbye.